Welcome back to the Joyride. This time we're testing the SMITH Shapes Hooligan. SMITH Shapes is a brand made by Jordy Smith and his dad Graham, who's been shaping a lot of his boards throughout his career. And when they're not making boards for Jordy on tour, they also want to make boards for the everyday person in everyday ways. So that's where this board comes in. It's a flatter, wider, little bit shorter version of a shortboard, and realistically it's made for the weak average waves that most of us surf on a daily basis. However, the thing with the Hooligan is that it has a bit more flip in the nose and flip in the tail, so that when that one really good section comes, it can still perform. Jordy says he likes to ride this board at home. It's a board that he can just throw in the car and know that he's gonna have a good time on. Being from New Jersey, I've also seen Rob Kelly riding this board in pretty much any condition at all, and he looks like he's having so much fun, going so fast all the time. So I had to get one to try it out, and now we're here, so let's go surf. All right, first session on the Hooligan, done and dusted, and it was enlightening. We ended up going to this punchy, wedgy little beach break, and there were some moments where the board felt really good. On some waves, I really felt like the board was just connected to my feet, like it was just stuck to my back foot especially, and I think that's a little bit of lift in the tail. It just wants to kind of meet your foot under you and go wherever you want to go, which is a really nice feeling. But at times when I got sort of like a bigger, steeper wave, the board just felt a little bit flat, a little bit wide, and it didn't quite fit the curve of the wave. With that in mind, I also used the pivot fins from Futures this session, thinking that, you know, it would allow me to do turns that are really sort of angular to fit in these really small corners. But sometimes they actually gave out a little bit too much. I was sort of losing my grip, skidding out. There were other moments where they held just enough to allow me to do a turn that felt really nice, but overall I think we can find a better fin for this board. So next session we're gonna go to a wave that is a little bit softer, a little bit more open face, and I'm also gonna put in a fin that has a little bit more rake so that it can hold on those longer arcs, and hopefully we find the perfect combination. Session 2 on the Hooligan is done, and really different conditions to the other day. You just had more time to set up on the wave, sort of pick your line and choose which sections that you really wanted to attack. I still felt that on some of the bigger waves and some of the more powerful waves, I was a little bit skatey, but I was able to lock it in most of the time. And then when you got sections that were of that mid-size, clean face, this board really grabbed and dug in, which I really liked. It was super quick in transition. There were times where I was able to go from one turn into the next really quickly, and it flowed really nicely between maneuvers. It also covered flat sections really well. I remember a couple waves where I was just weaving back and forth. It felt really nice, and I feel like these were more of the conditions that Graham and Jordy had in mind when they made this board. Just a little bit softer, a little bit flatter, and a board that can do, honestly, a lot of the heavy work for you. Another thing that I really like about this board is it has the width, but it also has a really nice thin rail to it. And I think that a lot of times when people are getting a smaller wave board, they go wide and thick. I tend to think it's better to go one or the other, because if you go wide and thick, then you're never gonna be able to set the rail when it counts. Versus with this one, you have a nice tight rail and you can actually dig it into the wall when you get a steeper section. I think that's really important. So this session I went with the rake fins from Future's Legacy series. They're on the opposite end of the spectrum from the pivots that I used in the first session, and the difference was immense. I just had so much more control, I wasn't skidding out, and it really goes to show that sometimes you want a fin that complements the board rather than matching it. So especially in waves like this, it's really good to put in a fin that can hold a bit more, and in this case I really like the rakes. Overall, the Hooligan, we had actually waves that were almost a little bit too good for it this whole time, which is a shame because you could tell when you got on the waves that didn't have that much push, it loved to generate its own speed and just sort of create these magic little moments. Sometimes I felt like I was having to control it and steer it a bit because of how fast it was going and how much push the waves had, but I can totally understand why Jordy would have this in his car all the time in California. So if you're looking for a board that pretty much anyone can ride, from a tour pro to an average surfer, in most waves, most days of the year, the Hooligan is your go-to.